Hello, everybody. My name is Alessia Patuelli, and today I'm presenting, together with Fabio Saracco, this research titled Firms' Challenges and Social Responsibilities During COVID-19, a Twitter analysis. So I'm going to present you first the idea and motivation for our paper, then the theoretical background, then I'll leave the floor to Fabio for the materials, method, and results, and I will come back for the discussion and conclusion and for further research. So our research idea was to join management science with complex systems. So we wanted to study corporate social responsibility and stakeholder engagement on Twitter with complex network methods. We also added a study on how firms are discussing during the COVID-19 pandemic. So the theoretical background is based on three pillars. First, firms' challenges during the COVID-19 pandemic. Second, CSR, corporate social responsibility, and third, stakeholder engagement. We want to study this in the COVID-19 pandemic and with network methods on Twitter. So, firms' challenges. Most research at the beginning of the pandemic used basically conceptual, survey-based or interview-based methods. Actually, we know that we can use online social networks to have some idea of the current issues, trends, and challenges that firms are facing. And also, a data-driven approach can help us to reveal complex patterns arising from the data. So this brings us to the first research question, which is how is firms' Twitter discussion developing during the COVID-19 pandemic? The second research pillar is CSR. CSR is all the responsibilities that a business has towards society, namely environmental, social, and economic responsibilities. So with the advent of the internet, firms disseminate their social reporting also on their websites and on social media. There are some findings about CSR, and they basically say that firms use social network to discuss about CSR in just a few cases, but there are some mixed findings. So this brings us to the second research question, which is which CSR dimensions and topics do firms discuss on Twitter? The third theoretical pillar is stakeholder engagement. Stakeholder engagement is all the practices an organization undertakes to involve its stakeholders in a positive manner. So we assume that users in online social networks are part of firms' stakeholder, and we want to measure the extent to which they engage with the firm. Previous research says that online social networks are not fully used to interact and engage with stakeholders, but there are some mixed findings. So this brings us to our third research question, which is to what extent do the CSR dimensions resonate with the public? So I'll leave the floor to Fabio for the materials, method, and result.
Hi, I'm Fabio Saracco from Centro Ricerche Enrico Fermi in Rome, and I'm going to introduce some details of the analysis presented by Alessia. So let's start with the dataset. We collected data from AIDA, the Italian section of Bureau van Dijk, regarding the greatest companies in Italy. And in particular, in order to get the Twitter account, we started from the official websites. And then from the website, we got the various Twitter accounts. Then, using the official API from Twitter platform, we downloaded the most recent post, resulting in 1.6 million of tweets. Actually, we are interested in the contribution of those accounts in creating a common narrative during the first wave of the pandemic. So we focus only on those accounts that were active in the entire period, and this resulted in 400 accounts. Data representation. Actually, our target is to detect group of accounts that contributed to the creation of a common narrative. So we represented the system as a bipartite network of accounts on one layer and hashtags on the other one. And two different accounts share a similar communication strategy if they share quite a number of hashtags in their messages in this period. The only problem is how many hashtags are necessary in order to state that the two accounts are indeed similar. We need a benchmark. The natural choice in order to have an unbiased benchmark is to choose for a maximum entropy null model that is a null model that is maximally random, but for some information on the real system. In a nutshell, this methodology resides in three main steps. First, the definition of graphs ensemble, starting from the real network. All of the representative in the ensemble have the same number of nodes, but different linkage configuration. Then you can assign to each of the representative a different probability by maximizing the Shannon entropy associated to the ensemble and constraining some information that you think that is relevant for the description of the system. In many cases, as it is ours, this is going to be the degree sequence. Finally, in order to get the numerical value of all the parameters into the game, we maximize the likelihood of the real system. You can find more details in the Nature Review Physics of 2019. Okay, how can this methodology be applied in our case? We got this bipartite network, then we applied all this machinery that may seem complicated, but indeed there are some Python modules, for instance, the BCM that can be used as a standalone Python module or is integrated in an entropy Python module. You can find both of them on PyPy, and more technical details can be found in the last scientific reports by Valaran and collaborators. And using these, comparing the amount of common hashtags with this benchmark, we are able to project the original bipartite network on the layer of Twitter accounts. The result is the one displayed here. We got a network of 80 nodes and 135 links that is organized in several communities based on the main subjects of their communication strategy. So for instance, we got digital transformation, environmental sustainability, remote working, and stuff like this. And indeed, depending on what is the focus of the narrative shared by this group, we can find that the various communities are more or less involved in using corporate social responsibility hashtags. So I'm going to leave the stage again to Alessia.
Thank you, Fabio. So we measure stakeholder engagement as the number of retweets and likes per hashtag. What we find is that CSR hashtags are retweeted less than other hashtags. And also this happens to the likes. So what we find is that common narratives are naturally emerging from the data, and our findings tell us that the digital innovation is one of the central themes in firms' Twitter discussion in Twitter at the beginning of the pandemic, which is consistent with the first results on firms' reaction during the COVID pandemic. There was an increase in the digitalization of the firms. So we find that CSR is not evenly distributed among the communities and firms. So the prevalent CSR dimensions firms disseminate on is contingent on the community, which is a unique finding. Also, we confirm previous literature finding that environmental and social dimensions are the prevalent one, while the economic dimension is overlooked on Twitter. We also find about stakeholder engagement that the posts with CSR hashtags has less engagement than other posts, which is consistent with the literature. So we confirm that online social networks are not fully exploited to interact and engage on CSR. But we add on unique findings, which is that stakeholder engagement changes depending on the community in the same way that CSR changes among what firms disseminate. So our paper brings some contributions which are methodological, integrating complex network analysis in management research, on the literature on firms and online social networks, and with practical implication, because we believe that online social networks can be an additional tool for managers and policymakers to make decisions. So we are working to extend this research. So we are comparing now these results with another European country, and we found that the United Kingdom has the highest frequency of large firms with a Twitter account. And we are also going to study how firms are discussing SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, following the idea that firms are key players in achieving the SDGs. So we want to understand how they are doing this. So thank you very much for listening, and that's all.